rolling. Ready when you are, TP.
And we are live of episode 1 of Live and in Color. Howdy, I am Turnpike, and joining me is the main man of NASCAR YouTube, breaking news like Stone Cold breaks bottles. The fella in yellow that tells it like it is, but is known to get occasionally a little bit out of the groove. The man with over 200,000 YouTube subscribers, the legend that is Eric Estepp. Eric, thank you so much for being the inaugural guest on the show. It truly does mean a lot to me.
Well, thank you, Turnpike. That was a glorious intro. No better way to start my morning. You know, a cup of coffee, that's all great, but nothing energizes me quite like a beautifully choreographed introduction. So thank you so much. That was an honor.
Well, I will do it every morning for the low price of $49.99 a month. So contact my booking agent and we can make that happen. Anyway, so we wanted to kick the show off with a bang. And I asked a man who I consider to be not only a colleague, but also a friend, Mr. Eric, if he would do me the honors being the first guest. He accepted, and here we are. Now, people might know a little bit about our history, but me and Eric, I met Eric for the first time in 2021 at 22, I think, at Daytona. I've ran into him every year since then. I have since then been a guest on the NASCAR Weekly podcast, one of the highlights of my especially dull career. But that was a highlight. But I want to talk about, because people don't know this, and this is very funny. The first time I ever laid eyes on Mr. Eric Estepp, and I didn't say anything to him. I think I've told you this story. It was the first time I saw you. So 22, before the Daytona week, I always go to Orlando and head to Disney World for a couple days. And in 22, nice. I was staying at Pop Century, which is one of my personal favorite hotels. We were staying at Pop Century, and getting on the bus, you know, everybody was super masked up. You know, it was still a lot of COVID mandates. So I'm getting on the bus to go back to the hotel from Magic Kingdom, and there is a dude that is probably, I don't know, how tall are you, Eric?
About 6'7", so I stand out.
Yeah, and you were
people
standing,
usually see me before I see them.
You were like standing in, I think you were also staying at Pop Century, and we were in the same queue bus line, but I couldn't tell. I was like, that has to be Eric. That has to be Eric, because he's like 6 foot whatever at the time, and I was like, wow. And I was like, that has to be Eric. I would say that has to be Eric. But you had a mask on. At this point, I hadn't even talked to you before. And no, I think we had done a video call, whatever. I said, that has to be Eric, but I didn't say anything. And then I think I met you at the track, and I said, did you stay at Pop Century? And you were like, yeah. And I was like, that was you then.
That was me.
So I don't know how
That's
other
hilarious.
many 6 foot, 7 foot people I would have accidentally ran into, but
there's not a lot of us. We're an endangered species.
Yeah, he shouldn't be on YouTube. He should be protecting the rim for the Houston Rockets, but that's a whole different story.
The number of jokes I get anytime I post like a full body photo on like Instagram or Twitter, like everyone in the comments is like, hey, my team needs a center. Like, get
in here.
To hell with the draft. So we need to sign you as a unrestricted free agent.
I remember one of the first posts I ever had on Twitter that had like over like 20 likes or whatever, is somebody posted a picture of you at a track, and you were like towering over everybody, and somebody was like, find Eric in this picture, and I circled the lamp post and said, try again. And
that's funny.
You retweeted it, and that was one of the first like posts to ever get 20 likes on my Twitter. So
that's amazing. That's hilarious. I forgot about that.
I remember it vividly because we just got back from Hickory Motor Speedway, and I had met Rajah Caruth, so I was looking through my photos with Rajah Caruth, and I was posting on Twitter, and then I saw that and thought it was funny. Anyway, so we've had quite a history, and you know, I'm not exactly sure when this episode's coming out, so we agreed to be kind of more general, but the Chicago Street Race did just happen, and I think it really illustrates the polarity in the NASCAR community, because there's people like me. I don't know where you fall on this. That's why I was going to ask. People like me, I am like 110% like the Chicago street race is the most important race of the year, aside from the Daytona 500. Getting new eyes, making headlines, doing something big that's going to catch national attention. That's our only other option other than Daytona, unless there's a horrific wreck, because that is the other way that NASCAR gets on the news.
Yeah.
Whether it's, the Newman or last year with Ryan Preece, that sort of thing. And it just feels so weird to see something that I perceive as being so important being like just bashed left, right, and center everywhere. I didn't know, you as a content creator, you do a very good job of kind of maintaining a neutral, informative opinion instead of, yeah, man, these NASCAR drivers going around Chicago, man, people are going to get shot, which is all I see on Twitter. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
But like, legitimately, what are your honest thoughts about the concept of the street race, whether it's in Chicago or not in Chicago?
I just think I kind of agree with you that it's probably the second most important race of the year outside of the Daytona 500. I mean, last year it was the second most watched race outside of the Daytona 500, despite all of the red flag delays, weather concerns. You're bringing the product to the people. With all due respect to Chicagoland Speedway, or even the great event that was held at Iowa earlier this summer, you have to seek that race out. The only people finding those races are hardcore fans who already know what NASCAR is, who either grew up going to races or love watching and going to races now. But Chicago, and I'm not sure if you've been to either of the street races, but being the last 2 years, you walk around downtown Chicago, Michigan Avenue, huge touristy spot, millions of people. You can't take 10 steps without seeing NASCAR branding, without knowing that NASCAR is in town. And I know the first year I went, it was surreal because my whole life, NASCAR, even when it was more mainstream, it still felt kind of niche. Like when I would go out and
Yeah.
see someone in a Jeff Gordon t-shirt, I'd be like, that's crazy. I was the only kid at my school wearing NASCAR merch with any sort of regularity. It stood out. Anytime I saw NASCAR in the wild, it put a little smile on my face, even if it was like a driver I didn't like or care for necessarily. I just was like, hey, that's one of us. And you go to downtown Chicago for this weekend and the week or weeks leading up to it, it's everywhere. It's crazy. It's like something out of it's like a fantasy I had as a kid where suddenly NASCAR, the thing I care most about, everybody else cares about it too. Like it's easy to go down the street and talk football. It's easy to talk, baseball, basketball in most cities, but you can't just walk down the street, at least where I'm from, and strike up a NASCAR conversation. Suddenly you could. I'd go to, Starbucks in the morning. Oh, you're in town for the race? Yeah, I'm in town for the race. Oh, who's the favorite? Like those are conversations I was having with random local Chicago citizens last year and this year. And that's just, you don't get that anywhere else. That does not happen anywhere else in any other major city in America at any point this year. Even the Clash at the Coliseum, which I went to the first 2 years in Los Angeles, right there in the heart of LA, people maybe knew it was happening, but it wasn't the same. NASCAR took over the center of the third largest city for back-to-back 4th of July weekends. Like that is, it's surreal to say it out loud. And it's even more surreal to see it in person. So to what you said, it's a great opportunity to at least raise awareness that NASCAR isn't what maybe your granddad portrayed it as. Like there's nothing wrong with NASCAR's roots and its history, but it's not a regional Southeastern sport anymore. It's nationwide. It's even worldwide. There's something for everyone. It's not a, so tight knit that it's hard to break in. It's like, no, NASCAR is in fact something that can be shared and enjoyed by just about anyone. And I think the Chicago street race shows that better than any race on the schedule, which is why it's important, which is why it sucks when the weather keeps getting in the way and dampening the weekend. But I think it's been very effective these last 2 years, and I hope it continues at least for next year and going forward. Even if it's not in Chicago, I'd love to see it in another big city somewhere, somehow.
You're not telling me we couldn't convince the city of Charlotte to do one? I mean,
You don't need it in
they're
Charlotte.
right there.
I
I'm
would.
just
You don't
saying,
need
like
it. You don't need it in Charlotte. You need to take it to Denver. You need to take
that
it
would be
to
cool.
Long Beach. You need to take it to New York City. I'm not going to go there. You could, if that'd be awesome if it worked, but I just think that's unrealistic. You need to take
Yeah,
it to non-traditional NASCAR markets, is how I feel, because it is a very non-traditional NASCAR race, and I think that is the point. It's showcasing that NASCAR is not just Talladega Nights. It's not just left turns. Obviously, fans like you and I
sure.
get it that it's not just turning left. There's so much more to it. But the casual, the outsider looking in, sees left turns and tunes out. This shows that NASCAR is so much more than that, and I think it makes the most sense to bring that to an audience, a city, a demographic that historically doesn't pay close attention to NASCAR. So Chicago, Denver, Las Vegas, maybe. I know F1's there. I mentioned Southern California. Need to have a presence there. I feel like those are the cities, just examples of some cities you could look at that make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I kind of like, it's funny to talk about like the heritage of the sport, where, we do this. But like, isn't a street race almost more closely aligned to the original heritage of the sport than an oval? Because
Yeah, you could
if
argue.
we're all like, yeah, man, we started with moonshiners and bootleggers and stuff, it's like they didn't moonshine and bootleg on oval tracks. They moonshined and bootlegged through the streets. Like
That's true.
like
No, there
I
is a
think
lawlessness
it's
element to it.
yeah, that's actually I think a little bit more accurate to what we're trying to do, which is why I kind of thought it'd be kind of cool to do a like a street race or an exhibition, something that is on legitimate. My pipe dream is to do it on like legitimate back roads, and then
Hey, there's some that'd be
have
kind of
it
cool.
have it as like a moonshine like heritage race, and then it's literally like on like the back streets of the middle of nowhere, and with like no fans, just TV. I think it'd be cool. Anyway,
That would be cool.
so
That would be neat.
you made an observation yesterday when we were talking about, kind of planning this out with about a certain driver that may or may not have got crashed out of the race. And you were talking about the amount of merch that people were wearing of said driver. So I thought what you said was really illuminating. Can you bring that back to the forefront here?
Yeah, we were talking about Shane Van Gisbergen, who a year ago, roughly, very few NASCAR fans knew who he was. If you're a more broad motorsports fan, you obviously knew about his success in supercars. I knew him because he'd raced in iRacing events I'd hosted and broadcast on my channel and won them. That's where I'd first heard his name. And then I was like, oh, I see. He does supercars. I haven't watched much, but that's cool. He's a three-time champion, I believe. But last year, obviously, he won Chicago in his first ever NASCAR start and was put on the map instantly. He became an American racing name. Um, but what we were talking about yesterday, Turnpike, was that NASCAR doesn't have superstars anymore, especially not since Jeff
Correct.
Gordon and Dale Earnhardt Jr. retired. And what I saw at Chicago was maybe the first NASCAR superstar in years. There were a ton of Shane Van Gisbergen shirts, New Zealand flags in the stands. When he would make a pass for third, for second in the Xfinity race on Saturday, the crowd would cheer. I was on the ground, front and center for driver intros. Shane Van Gisbergen got more cheers, noticeably more cheers than Kyle Larson, arguably NASCAR's current biggest star. That tells me that what American sports fans want, or just sports fans worldwide, because there were a lot of folks from Australia and New Zealand apparently in Chicago this weekend, is they want to see greatness. And what I argued on my show recently is that Shane Van Gisbergen at Chicago was the only driver capable of achieving greatness. He could go back to back, win back to back Chicago street races. That's incredible. He could go sweep the weekend. He won the Xfinity race on Saturday. What if he'd won on Sunday? That's incredible. I think a lot of sports fans say they hate dominance, but then you look at the NBA Finals ratings when it was Steph Curry and LeBron every year, and the ratings were through the roof. You know what I mean? And so I think Caitlin Clark for women's basketball is an exceptional talent, superstar. She's elevating the whole sport. Tiger Woods, what he did for golf 20 something years ago, he was a superstar, stood out from the pack. He elevated golf. I don't know what their numbers look like now, but once he retired or started to get hurt, their numbers went down, obviously. You need superstars. Shohei Ohtani in baseball. More eyes were tuned into the World Baseball Classic than ever before because it was Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout and the Americans. Big names, superstars. NASCAR just doesn't have that right now. And I think sometimes it's because with the way these cars race and the types of tracks we go to, it's hard to see their talent put on full display. Like you see a guy make a nice pass for third, but That's not what makes the highlight reel. NASCAR will upload the previous races highlights onto YouTube, and it's just crashes. That's their whole highlight reels. Crash,
Yeah.
crash, crash. Maybe one pass for the lead. Okay. But it's crash, crash. Like NASCAR doesn't have highlights the way other sports do, or they're not highlighted the way other sports show their highlights. And I think as a result, there's a number of factors beyond just that. We don't have superstars because nobody really stands out from the pack. NASCAR promoted all the 17, 18 different winners they had 2 years ago. Like that's awesome. That's exciting that anyone can win. It's fun to talk about, but there comes a point where you need a couple of drivers to stand out from the pack to become those superstars, because that's what's going to boost ratings, elevate the sport. Kyle Larson trying to run the Indy 500 Coke 600 double boosted ratings for both, because that was potentially greatness. And I think that's what sports fans ultimately, that's what's going to get them to a TV. That's what's going to get them to buy a ticket, is if someone has the opportunity of achieving greatness, history. That's what people want to see.
Yeah. Well, it's like, being a Yankees fan, think about when Aaron Judge was chasing 62,
I'm sure the stands were
that's
packed every night. Yeah.
that's greatness. And people
Yep.
I mean, non-Yankees fans they were tuned into every game he played because they want to see the record get broken.
Exactly. LeBron last year trying to break the scoring record. I mean,
Yeah.
it was incredible hype for like a week leading up to it. Yeah, people want to see greatness. And NASCAR right now has a bunch of very good drivers sharing the wealth more or less, but there's no one standing out. There's no catalyst that's currently vaulting the sport forward. And I think big picture, that could end up being a problem.
Yeah, and my kind of point is I've always really liked Alex Bowman. I love Alex Bowman. I have tons of merch, die casts, I've got hats, I've got t-shirts. I love Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman winning that race did nothing for NASCAR. It did wonders for Bowman. He's locked into the playoffs. It's breaking the streak. That's cool. With Shane gone, the person that had to win that race was Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick needed to win that race with a Michael Jordan paint scheme on the streets of Chicago. That would have been big headlines. And I was so upset when he walled it right there on the last lap, because I was like, he's got this. He's got this. And then he flubbed it up, which Tyler Reddick has done before. But that would have been a get your name outside of the bubble moment.
That I agree. And I don't want to sound like, because I've been accused of being an Alex Bowman hater, and I feel like I'm just an objective Alex Bowman realist more than anything. But
he won a race in like 2 years.
I don't want to sound like a hater, but I do wholeheartedly agree with you in that respect, that a Reddick win, I didn't even think about the paint scheme and that significance, but a Reddick win absolutely would vault the sport outside of its bubble more so than Bowman. Bowman winning was still good. I think back to last year's race, and as much as I love Justin Haley, if he had somehow squeaked out that win, thanks in part to the wacky strategy and, rain shortened race, that would have been kind of deflating, just because he wasn't the best car driver, and Justin Haley's not exactly a name that's going to be on the tip of everyone's tongue anytime too soon. Like he's not again, not breaching the bubble. SVG winning last year was fun, and this year a Reddick win or another SVG win I think could have done wonders. But Bowman winning, not a big deal. I think in the NASCAR bubble a Bowman win was very popular, very exciting. So it wasn't but you think like I do. Like I think, as someone who covers the sport now 24/7, 365, I root for stories. People ask me all the time, who's your favorite driver? I don't have a favorite driver. You may think I hate your favorite driver or I love this driver, but I don't. I honestly don't. I personally feel like I am very neutral, very objective when it comes to most everyone.
You are. Unless Matt Kenseth comes back.
Yeah, sure. If Matt Kenseth were to race, I would root for him. I can say that wholeheartedly. but as a result, I just root for interesting stories. I root for things that I want to talk about, what other people want to talk about. And, a Justin Haley win at Chicago isn't quite as interesting as a Shane Van Gisbergen winning at Chicago in his first NASCAR start. Like that's a much more interesting story. So naturally, when I'm sitting there, that's typically what I'd root for.
Yeah. I'm to the point now where I'm kind of rooting for teams that seem to want to be there, if that makes any sense. That's why I was glad that Ganassi left. That's why I was on Twitter celebrating the Stewart Haas sale. Is teams like that, it feels to me, this is my personal opinion, this is not a opinion of the show, this is a Turnpike opinion. is I only want to root for people that seem to want to be there. Stuart Haas doesn't seem to want to be there. They don't act like, because you prove that with your performance. You prove that with
Sure.
your media. You prove that with your, just your entire package. And the point that's driven this home is I used to think Colleague was like that. I was like, yeah, dude, Colleague. I'm so excited for Colleague. They're gonna be huge. Another great Chevy team. My opinion has 180'd on Colleague. I could not care less about Colleague. Now I am, anytime a 2311 or Trackhouse car is in contention for the win, I am rooting for them to win, because a win to them means so much more. They promote it so much, better,
It
and it
validates the hard
feels
work they've
more
been putting
important.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah. I'm with
way
you.
more important when a team like them wins versus, I mean, I don't want to say, like, I love Hendrick Motorsports. Like, they're my family's team. They always have been. Is when they win, it's like, all right, another successful day at the office. That's because they're the ultimate professional kind of in that way, where they
Sure.
win. All right, guys, great win. Let's get it ready for next week. Versus
Yeah,
a team like Trackhouse 2311 that feels like, it just feels huge.
But so that's the one thing, this will contradict sort of what we said, is I did like about Alex Bowman winning this past week. And I know we're recording this probably weeks before it comes out, but Alex Bowman celebrating in the media center, talking smack,
Yeah,
partying all night long, posting it to social media. Like, not every
that was
driver or team
fun.
would have done
That
that.
was
And that
fun.
was good.
Yeah.
That's good content for the fans. So I will give Bowman and team credit for that.
Yep. Yeah. That is, in all fairness, that is correct. Yeah. I remember on Twitter somebody posted, and it was a video of like Kyle Larson walking down the street in full fire suit,
And
and
very few people noticing. Yeah.
nobody knows who it
I,
was. And
I,
I commented like, do you guys not know that NASCAR drivers are not celebrities anymore? We've got to you've got to think about this.
no, they're not.
They're not celebrities. Like, I harp all the time, and I've really gotten more into it recently, where my podcast co-host Green, me and him are big short track fans, and he's like, man, we need to show these people good short track racing. And I'm like, no, they don't understand short track racing. Short track racing is, if you understand racing, you enjoy short track racing. That's just kind of one of the general rules. But it's like me explaining to him baseball. I can go and I can be like, dude, like, this is greatness. Look at Shohei Ohtani. I mean, he's a designated hitter with this much WAR and this. And when he pitches, his ERA is this. And that means nothing to him. It's like, how do you not like this? It's so good. NASCAR has the kind of same, NASCAR fans have kind of the same issue, where they can show great short track racing to somebody, and they're like, okay, well, what's so great about this? It's only when you understand. Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
stake?
I'll never forget a
Yeah.
comment that has stood out to me and will always stand out to me, is a NASCAR quote by Dixie D'Amelio, of all people. I cannot believe I am quoting a D'Amelio. So for the first, I don't know if you ever saw this video, but for the first Clash at the Coliseum, Mars Incorporated sent the D'Amelio family to the Coliseum race. They were there. They were wearing Kyle Busch jackets. Attractive girl in a Kyle Busch M&M's jacket might be the greatest look of all time. Not biased, but she was there, and they were like filming like some vlog stuff in the track, watching the race. And her question was, why do they drive so slow? I thought they would be faster. And that has
That's a great
stuck
question.
to me. That has stuck in my mind. Not putting that joke in. But that quote has stuck in my mind, because people are like, well, isn't NASCAR supposed to be super mega fast? They're not driving that fast. Why are they going so slow? I thought this was like fat. And they see Daytona and they're like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. But also, the TV product doesn't do a very good job of making it look as fast as they actually are. Until you're there, you're like, holy crap. But that is stuck in my mind, of the presentation and everything needs to be kind of adjusted, where it's you got to think about it from a non NASCAR perspective. I didn't like NASCAR until I went to the Daytona 500 in 2020. I'm what you would consider a pretty new fan, and I think I bring a different, perspective from a stick and ball sports into NASCAR, not being NASCAR the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Yeah, you're a newer fan than I am, but like I watch a ton of other sports. Like, I watch a ton of baseball, basketball, football. I even watched Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals recently. I don't know anything about hockey, but again, something was at stake. There was history on the line there. Was Florida going to blow a 3-0 lead? So that got me to a TV. Man, I didn't even think about that. That's great evidence. I'm no better than the casual American sports fan. You give me stakes, I'll tune in. And right now, NASCAR rarely has true stakes. Larson trying the double, stakes. SVG trying to go back to back at Chicago, something's at stake. We need more of those. Game 7 moments be damned. We need something actually at stake. We need greatness, history on the line, and that just doesn't happen regularly enough.
Yeah, so like tell me what was at stake. What was at stake on April 7th at Martinsville Speedway? What was on stake there?
Oh, grandfather clock, Boyer. There was a
Steve, like what? Like
I mean,
so
yeah.
like if you think about it, like my opinion, this is another Turnpike opinion. The NASCAR season is far too long. That's number one.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
because when you have that much of something, it's not valuable. It's not the
Right.
reason that people will pay however many hundreds of dollars for NFL Sunday ticket is because their team only has 17 games.
Yep.
In my mind, it's still 16 games because that's how it worked for the majority of my career.
Getting used to that.
But
yeah.
if you've only got 17 games, and the difference between getting into the playoffs and not sometimes is one game, one loss. Like that makes it feel like opening week to week 17, everything is super mega important. Like we're in the period of the season where I would say we just got out of the period of the season where I kind of tune out a little bit because it's just the lull of, okay, at the beginning of the season, it's, oh my gosh, NASCAR. And then it's like, yeah. And it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna take a little break. And then you come back right before the playoffs. That's how I feel about it.
That's a very common. I mean, the ratings would suggest very much the same thing. Although they've tried their best with Iowa and Chicago to spruce up the June, July doldrums, I guess. Brickyard 400 is back. They're doing their best to keep this time of year interesting. But historically speaking, these are kind of the dry months.
Yeah, it's been very hit or miss, and this is where I will be honest. I haven't talked about this a lot, but I've always been a mega hater of the NASCAR playoff format. And going into the championship, I felt like it was a turning point for me in some ways. I've never been more down on NASCAR than I was after championship weekend last season.
Last year? Okay.
Last year. So you've got Corey Heim that should have been he in full season points, he would have won the championship like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. You've got, who was it? John Hunter Nemechek, I think, when he was running Xfinity last year. He was by far the favorite. And then William Byron. I was like, dude, all three of my guys I'm rooting for in this situation are by far the best cars all year. And 0 of them walked away with a championship. And it just felt, I felt legitimately like I had just got slapped in the face. And I know if it's because I'm not a fan of any of the drivers that won. I get that. If all of my drivers had won, someone else would be feeling the way I felt. And that's fine. But I've never felt more just what's the point than now. In pretty much any other sport, anything I watch, if you're good enough to win and you've earned it, you earn it and you walk away with it. But NASCAR is the only sport that I follow that's like, yeah, dude, he won 28 races, but he got wrecked on lap 1 of the championship race, so he doesn't get it. He doesn't get the championship.
I think the bigger problem with NASCAR is that because it's not a one-on-one matchup week to week, it's 1 versus 30 basically, that there are a lot of variables and a lot of things that can happen that more or less are out of your control. Everything's a little in your control. I believe you do make your own luck a bit. Oh, I got wrecked. Well, you shouldn't have been in 20th. You know what I mean? Like there's elements of luck for sure, but a lot of it is you make your own luck. But still, there's a lot that can happen that is more or less beyond your control. I like the playoff format, so it's interesting for you to hear you say that as another person who comes from stick and ball sports. I agree with you, I think, on this front that the one thing I don't love is the winner take all final race. If that was another 3 race round, like the 3 rounds before it, I think I would be more on board with it, because while still you could get wrecked in that first race of the round and be in a huge points deficit and have a hard time coming back, you're still in it. You are still like, you still have a chance. 3 races is a long time. Things can ebb, things can flow. A
Yeah.
one race winner take all finale does result in some just weird stuff. I mean, the truck race, I was, to be fair, I was with you. I was very down, not only on the format, but the whole sport, the future of the sport. Watching that truck race last year, seeing these 20-year-olds who have so much potential just make absolute asses of themselves on the racetrack and hand the championship to Ben Rhodes, who, I like Ben Rhodes, but he had no business. I mean, of the 4, he was 4th, I guess, last year,
Yeah.
and he walks away with the big trophy. So I'm with you there. I do think if NASCAR is to make any changes to the format going forward, it needs to be adding 2 races to the find. I know maybe they don't want to make a 12 race playoffs. Maybe in their eyes that's too long. But if you're truly insistent on this round by round knockout style format, that last round needs to be less fluky. I still think back to 2021. That whole year was so interesting because Kyle Larson dominated, won 10 races, but you could see some of the Joe Gibbs racing cars focusing on that radically different short track package because they knew Martinsville Phoenix at the end of the year would use that package. And so everyone going into Phoenix was like, Kyle Larson's going to win. And I looked at it and said, well, Martin Truex Jr. has focused on this all year. He is going to lead the most laps. He is going to dominate this race, and it's going to take something random to cost him the chance. Like, I looked at it and said, yeah, I know we're all talking about Larson. He's had a historic year, but guys, Martin Truex Jr. is about to win this championship. And sure enough, he was leading that race before that late caution. And the only reason Truex lost is because Kyle Larson had a better pit crew. Like, Kyle Larson's rapidly fast pit crew saved his 2021 season. That's what it came down to. It came down to that moment. And I don't know, do we really want the whole season's champion to come down to one moment like that? A timely caution, a fast pit stop, just one 9-second thing that determines the whole season. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather, I'm okay with a playoff format. I believe in bringing your best stuff at the end of the season when it matters most. That all makes sense to me. I can process that. But one race in a sport with so many variables is a little too fluky. I agree there.
Yeah, that was kind of my point. And even getting into this year, being in Daytona was great, always. But I watched the first 2 or 3 races, and then there was a point in time where a couple weeks I just said I just don't care, it's, and like I kind of comes off as like crybaby. Well, my guy didn't win. I'm not gonna watch NASCAR. But I mean, if people see it that way, that's fine, whatever. But it was a legitimate love of the sport, and I was like, dude, like, you can't. I mean, what it describes to me as is, think about it as if me and you are cars going down a street, okay, and your car is way faster, okay. So you should win. If we're having a street race, you should win every single time. But what NASCAR kind of does with the playoffs is it puts, and in races in general, is it puts stoplights. So it doesn't matter how far ahead you are, you hit a stoplight, I get to catch back up. So here I am, me trotting along, and we get to we're right in front of the cross, whatever we determine the cross is, and we're at the final stoplight. All I got to do is, as soon as that light turns green, hard hook left, wreck you, and then I win. And then it doesn't matter how you would have won this race in half an hour ago. But due to all these artificial stoplights we've added, guess who's right beside you? You gotta do it one more time. Oh, your luck ran out on the final one. Oh, I guess that you go home with nothing. Sorry. It feels like it feels like a claw vending machine kind of thing. Like, oh, you might get something. It's weird.
And it's crazy. It's better than it used to be. I think back to 2005. Yeah. People say they love the old chase format. That was stupid. You'd take the best 10, or then for a while the best 12 or 13 that 1 year drivers all year, and you'd reset them to 0. Like first and 10th place are now reset to 0 points, equal. Yeah. Jimmy Johnson, who had a dominant regular season, is now tied with who would have been Jamie McMurray. Like, that's not what?
Yeah.
Like, talk about negating the effects of making the regular season less important. Like, people say the regular season doesn't matter now. It mattered less in the mid 2000s, in my opinion, at least for the good teams. Whereas now, at least there are playoff points. There is, now if the playoffs started today, Kyle Larson would be like 30 points ahead of Alex Bowman, for example, or
Yeah.
Daniel Suarez. And it's like, okay, at least like, it's like, yes, the stoplight thing is artificial. And I agree that not everyone likes that. That's fine. But at least with this format, one car is going to get to start 20 yards ahead of another. Yeah, okay, we're both at the stoplight, but you're not tied with me. We're not until the championship race,
Yeah.
which again is why I'm with you that the championship race is a little screwy the way they do that round.
Yeah. Here's an idea that I'm sure other people talk about it, but my dad harps on it. Is
Mhm.
Dad said, to have the season be a little bit more valuable. What if the regular season champion, who is the champion through however many weeks the regular season is, what if they get an automatic berth in the Final Four? If you're going to do this
I don't.
format,
I'm not a big fan of that still. I don't want them to then get to take it's basically 9 weeks off where they have nothing to race for other than, I guess, glory of winning trophies. But like, that's my only concern there. I'm all for giving them more playoff points. I think they should get maybe double the playoff points they get now.
yeah,
But I don't want to give them just a lock into it, because then that's just the next 3
yeah,
months almost, or, no reason to watch.
or it's funny talking about sometimes that race wins mean a little bit more than others. It's like the first race of the final round. It's what is it, like Kansas or whatever? I know Joey Logano won at Kansas. Um, the most important race where you've locked yourself into the Final Four and you've got like 2 or 3 weeks to work on your Phoenix car.
Yeah.
Advantages like that. I always like little stuff like that. But yeah, there
No,
is
it's
some
fun.
decent parts to it. That's like, oh, that's kind of fun. But yeah, it was a rough time this time. Championship. Well, I guess it was earlier. But yeah, it was definitely
Yeah,
rough.
I
So
believe it. No doubt.
believe it. Well, we came into this episode being like, we're going to talk about, some other stuff too, some some non NASCAR stuff, but we've already kind of gotten close to our time limit, so maybe we'll have to bring Eric back for a part 2 sometime down the road, talk about some other
Cool
fun
with
stuff.
me.
But hey, first episode, we want to talk a little bit about NASCAR, do some other fun stuff. We have a lot of various stuff in common. We could talk about stuff for hours, as we have done at the racetracks various times.
Probably could,
But
yeah.
people here, this is kind of the NASCAR and the YouTube segment. So as the kind of final segment here, what if we talk about a little bit about, you know, people know you as the NASCAR news YouTube guy, but you didn't start that way. So, a lot of people are always like, I want to get into YouTube. I want to get into content creation. I want to get into this stuff. I know how you got into it, but a lot of people don't. So would you like to kind of illuminate a little bit to everybody about how you got into this whole ordeal?
Sure. I mean, I always liked making movies and using a camera and editing and trying to tell a story, or just entertain people. I always wanted to entertain people. And when I was 10 or 12, I don't remember exactly when, I got my first little cheap camera. And then eventually, a few years later, when I was a little older, my parents let me post some stuff to YouTube, and it was just fun. It was a great chance for me to share the videos with friends and stuff, because beforehand, my friends and I would film some goofy skit, and then we'd like force all of our parents to like gather around the computer while we showed it to them. Like, that was it. It's like, okay, watch what we just spent the last 5 hours making. And that was fun. But then, with YouTube growing up sort of in the YouTube age, YouTube was formed in '05, and I started uploading in 2011. But the years before then, I grew up watching the early days of YouTube. It was just the ability to, as they used to say, broadcast yourself to a larger audience, giving you the potential to build a platform for yourself that, to that degree, I'm not sure had ever really existed throughout human history before. And so, yeah, I guess there's just good timing being able to take advantage of that. I went to school, I went to college to study filmmaking, but had already started posting sort of NASCAR commentary and skits and whatnot, because I've always loved racing as well. And then post college, with the pandemic, there weren't a whole lot of jobs hiring. So I said, hey, NASCAR is the first major sport back. Let's go full on, full time, try to make this a real professional thing. And it worked out. Thankfully, I'm able to sustain myself. It's grown a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. I feel like I've originally had to build a lot of credibility, because originally I was just some guy who wasn't really close to the industry, filming videos in his apartment or dorm room or spare bedroom. And why take this guy seriously? And I think over the course of several years, being accurate, hopefully being objective, I think established a good amount of credibility. And now I get to go cover races basically whenever I want to. I get to talk to drivers, get to really now. My show's called Out of the Groove originally because it was a sort of play on words. I'm like, I am outside of the bubble we talked about earlier. I'm not in the Carolinas, not in the Southeast. I'm out of the groove, more or less. But I think that brought an interesting perspective that a lot of folks can relate to. Again, I feel like I'm living proof, and my audience, by and large, is living proof that NASCAR is a nationwide, worldwide phenomenon. And so, just been at it, keeping at it for several years. But yeah, it's been quite the journey to get to this point. I'm just very thankful that people continue to watch, and hopefully I continue to earn their attention, I guess, through the videos and commentary I put out there. So, but I really appreciate all the people who've supported me over the years, and it's also allowed me to meet awesome fans like you, like-minded race fans that growing up I didn't really have in my neighborhood. Like I said, I was the only kid at school wearing NASCAR stuff, so it's pretty cool to know as many other young NASCAR fans like I do these days.
Yeah, it's it's kind of funny. I was the exact opposite. I come from a racing family.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a full other history, but yeah, it's kind of weird. I've didn't know anything about NASCAR, didn't care anything about NASCAR. Finally went and did it, and now I have drivers' numbers in my phone. I worked kind of adjacent to the industry, meeting a lot of people in the industry, different teams and stuff, and it's been a hectic 4 years since I've got into it. Now I'm doing crap like this, so
it's awesome.
They said I could be anything I wanted to be. I chose the wrong thing, but I'm somewhere, aren't I?
Mm-hmm. This has been fun. I appreciate you having me on this show this week, Turnpike. I'm honored to be, I guess, the first. Is this the first? I'm the first guest, really? Wow.
You will be the first guest. Yeah, we wanted, I wanted
pressure.
somebody that I looked up to, I respected, and I thought
Literally
would be great for the product. And none of them returned my Instagram calls, but you did. So we've got our fifth string option here, Eric Estepp.
Nice. Awesome. Hey, I made it off the bench. Got to take full advantage of when you get the playing time, coach.
I feel like Brunson Honeydew. We called the best scientists to work at Muppet Labs. Unfortunately, none of them showed up. So yeah. We'll talk more. We'll talk more about our beloved Walt Disney Entertainment on a different episode. We plan to talk about that today, but we got off on something else. But we got to get Eric out of here because there was some news that just broke right before we started recording. Eric's got to make a video.
Never stops. I got stuff to do. Yeah, I know. But
video.
Good chatting with you, man. We'll definitely do this again soon because there is definitely more fun ground to cover, no doubt.
Yes, sir. Anyway, once again, this has been the first episode of Turnpike Live and in Color. I have been Turnpike. This has been Eric Estepp, and you have been awesome. Thank you, and we'll see you guys next time.